John Harvey Kellogg was born February 26, 1852, in Tyrone, Michigan. He founded the Battle Creek Sanatorium with his brother in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he eventually would go on to invent this, the modern idea of the cereal, which would revolutionize the breakfast world. Oh, gotta get milk. Ah, shit. Forgot to get milk. Woo! It's around here somewhere. Oh, God. I got almond milk because that's all I have. Oh, yeah, and he was freaking insane. Now, let's get some things clear before we get started. The Battle Creek Sanatorium was founded by John Harvey Kellogg and his brother Will Keith Kellogg, with the help of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which they were both part of, and John Harvey was very into. Now, I will be bringing up Will Keith a couple times more during this video, and I'll refer to him as Will Keith. But John Harvey, I'll either refer to him as Kellogg or John Harvey, just to make that clear. So without further ado, I'm going to discuss one of the lesser shocking of John Harvey's beliefs. It's one that kind of makes sense at the time, but it's also really unacceptable. I'm talking about... Now, if you don't know what eugenics are, eugenics is the scientific study of the idea that one race is genetically superior than another race. And that's not good. In fact, it's quite bad. Thankfully, eugenics is not part of our modern world science, as it's... well, it shouldn't even be called a science, let's be fair. Not even a pseudoscience. Now, these eugenic beliefs that John Harvey had were so deeply rooted into him that he actually founded a foundation by the name of the Race Betterment Foundation, which is, once again, terrible. It's almost comical how shameless they were about this. I forgot to set up the lighting! Are you kidding me? I mean, their beliefs got so bad that one of their objectives was to get rid of race degeneracy. Like, this is not even like supervillain level of things. This is just like, what? And people, what blows my mind is that people used to believe these things. These were real beliefs that were publicly accepted back then. It's terrible. In fact, these were such accepted beliefs that the Race Betterment Foundation at one point had $687,000 in assets. That's insane. They even had national meetings where like powerful people from all over the nation would join together and discuss these issues. It was insane. Now, they had a total of 3 meetings, with the 4th one planned. The first 2 went as planned, but the 3rd one was delayed because of a little tiny issue known as World War I happening. Now, the 4th meeting had a little bit more of speed bumps, as it was met with a little obstacle known as the Great Depression. And that knocked it back a bit, but then they fixed that and eventually were like, alright, let's try this again. And then World War II happened. And Kellogg died around this time too, I believe. That, along with the fact that at about around this time, they only had around $687 worth of assets, and the government kind of was shunning the idea of eugenics at that time, not because they had better moral compass, but because the Nazis were a thing at the time, and we were kind of enemies with them, and they wanted people to have a sense of patriotism, so like, hey, we don't agree with what they say. So, the Race Betterment Foundation thankfully died. Now, this is a bit surprising to find out at first, because when you initially look at John Harvey's achievements, you would think he's an educated man, and he was a generally, like, studious kind of guy. He had degrees in universities, he owned a sanatorium, which was essentially a hospital mixed with an asylum, mixed with therapists, mixed with a lab. Like, all sorts of things were discovered there. But that doesn't mean he didn't have more insane ideas. You see, as I mentioned, he was a really big part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who eventually shunned him because of his more scientific views, but he kept on to those beliefs. And it kind of carried over to his ideas of education in general. I need to get topped off. A little bit more cornflakes never did anyone no harm. That almond milk tastes like water. Anyways, John Harvey Kellogg was extremely hardcore about his religious views, to the point where he kind of mixes scientific views with them, and I'll be elaborating more and more about his religious views as we go on, and this is one of them. You see, John Harvey Kellogg had a belief with children, and that's the fact that they should not get any formal education. He actually believed that they should not go to elementary school or any kind of schooling, because in his eyes, all that education was worthless, because Jesus Christ would eventually rise and take us all to heaven anyways. So why does it matter? I find that really interesting, because usually religion is a way of putting life into perspective and going, well, here's the meaning of life. Here's why you should live a good life. But John Harvey Kellogg took it into a very pessimistic way in life doesn't matter. Why does it matter? If we just follow Christ's beliefs, it really doesn't matter. We'll have eternal life anyway, so why care about our lives? Just be healthy, be like a good son of Christ, and you'll be fine. There's not a lot more to elaborate on that one. I just thought it was a really interesting thing he believed in, and I've never really heard anything like it still. Now, as I said, Kellogg's religious beliefs extended to his scientific beliefs. And one of the most popular ones is about the very thing of eating 2 bowls of cornflakes. Let's talk about that. Now, by popular, I mean it's a very popular anecdote to say that cornflakes were invented for the sole purpose of being an aphrodisiac, which essentially means it was made to lower the sex drive. Which reminds me, I should probably get a little more in me. Am I right? That was a bad joke. I'm not cutting it though. I don't even know if that's considered a joke. It was just me saying, am I right? Third one of today, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that might be partly true, but you see, as far as I could tell through my research, cornflakes was never specifically advertised as an aphrodisiac. It was never really said by Kellogg himself that that was the purpose of it. You see, Kellogg actually had one belief that was really smart, really informed, and actually ended up being 100% true. Kellogg was one of the first scientific minds of his time to push for the idea of gut flora, or kind of germs in general inside of us, and how an unhealthy diet can harm us from the inside. And pretty much all of his reasoning was right. It's part of the reason why Kellogg had such an obsession behind eating healthy and cleaning yourself from the inside out. We'll get into more of that later. But cornflakes was specifically part of this idea of let's eat healthy. Let's have a breakfast that's really, really quick to make in the morning, but is also healthy. Because you see, at the time, the popular breakfast was porridge because it was easy to make, but it still took time. It still took about an hour or two to get it ready. So this had a good intention behind it. But that doesn't mean that the aphrodisiac thing is fake. You see, another one of Kellogg's beliefs was that flavorful and sugary foods higher the sex drive because of the dopamine that it gave you and the excitement that it gave you. You would get excited in other ways. So he believed that a bland, healthy diet would make you have lower sex drive. And this was very important for Kellogg because his beliefs in sex were insane. You see, Kellogg was, once again, really religious. But usually, religious people have the belief, and I say usually because not everyone does, obviously, but usually they have the belief that sex should just be for procreation. Right? It should just be for reproductive reasons. It should not be an enjoyable thing. It should not be a thing you do for joy. But Kellogg believed that all sexual activities were bad for you. Not just in a religious sense, but also in a scientific sense. He believed that the orgasm brought so much pleasure to the brain that it actively harmed it, to the point where it might even lower your lifespan. John Harvey Kellogg died a virgin. So, through all of these beliefs that sex was bad and that bland, healthy foods made you have less of a sex drive, it's really easy to connect the fact that cornflakes was part of that. And so, to clarify, cornflakes were not specifically designed for that, but it was a byproduct of those beliefs. And to cap off this section of the video, I just want to tell a story about cornflakes and Kellogg's as a company. You see, Kellogg made cornflakes in a sanatorium. That's where he would do the process to make them, and it was secret at the time. But Kellogg also had an obsession to show his patients everything he does in the sanatorium. His brother, Will Keith, begged him not to show his patients the process to make cornflakes because it was a potentially marketable item. But Kellogg, John Harvey Kellogg, being the type of guy he is, didn't listen to Will Keith. So he showed a man by the name of C.W. Post, who was a patient at the sanatorium, the process to make cornflakes. And C.W. Post thought this was a great idea. So as the name implies, you might already know this, C.W. Post went on to make Post cereal, which would go on to make a lot of money. Will Keith was not happy about this. So they both found that Kellogg's, as a company to sell cornflakes, eventually Will Keith wanted to move on from cornflakes and wanted to make more sugary foods. Obviously John Harvey was not happy about this, so John Harvey left. Let's move on to John Harvey's other inventions, because they were also freaking insane. Now I just want to say, if you think I'm faking eating this cereal, I am fully willing to edit just all of the shots of me eating cereal that are not going to make it in this video and make it into its own video and post it and just give the link to people who don't believe me. Because I really have eaten 3 bowls of cornflakes and I'm about to eat a 4th one. Or is it a 5th? Oh god, that's a lot of cornflakes! Obviously, owning a sanatorium meant that Kellogg did more than make cereal. He actually had other machinery and health-related things, as you'll see why I did that in a second, that he either invented or would use. For example, one that I can say for sure, because a lot of these are not well documented, so it's very hard to find any proof, but one that's well documented is the fact that John Harvey Kellogg was a believer in enemas. Once again, he really wanted us to be clean from the inside out, quite literally. He pretty much had an obsession with enemas. That was a sentence I just said. But it's true. He had a machine that was specifically an enema, just a machine. It wasn't just a normal enema you could buy off the store these days. It was a whole piece of machinery specifically to be an enema. And there's a good reason for that. You see, an enema might usually use a cup or 2 cups, maybe if you're feeling crazy, of water that goes in your rectum. But his would use gallons of water. Gallons! Might as well just eat some of this so I don't have to use an enema. Actually, with how many cornflakes I've eaten, maybe I might need an enema. But here is the craziest part. Kellogg didn't just believe in water enemas. He also believed that yogurt, if consumed, could clean you inside. And now, I said consume because that meant he believed that eating it would clean you on the inside. That wasn't all he believed, and you can see where I'm going with this. He would give patients a pint of yogurt to eat half of it and have the other half loaded into an enema and be used instead of water. John Harvey Kellogg used yogurt enemas, and he believed it worked. And he, like every other non-level-headed person, believed in electrotherapy, so he would shock his patients. Not that surprising when you realize how insane he truly was. The funniest of them all to me, because I have the humor of a 5-year-old, is all the poop-related machinery he had. I mean, obviously he had the enemas, but he also had a gut-punching machine, or slapping. I've seen both be described. I don't know if he did both or one or the other. Once again, this is where we're getting into the territory of that's not that well documented, but it fits, and I believe there's patents for a lot of these. So whether he built them or not, it's still a big question mark to me. But he had a machine that would essentially punch you in the stomach or slap you to make your digestive system... No. So he essentially had a machine which would punch you or slap you in the stomach to make you lose fat with the vibrations, but it also made your intestines like squeeze out the poop faster and better. So it was a pretty good deal. I mean, I would use it if it worked, but it probably didn't. And lastly, there's another invention that I love to call the poop chair. And I've seen it be called the poop chair, and I think that's the funniest name for it. It was just a massage chair. It was a chair that would vibrate once again to get everything that might be stuck inside of you unstuck. I'm gonna finish this bowl now. Now, there's a question that could be asked about all this information, which is, why did I make this video? It's not like I'm trying to call out Kellogg's as a company for having I found there's such as John Harvey Kellogg, because it really doesn't matter, because Kellogg's as a company doesn't follow like any of these. One of the biggest examples I have right here. John Harvey Kellogg would hate Pop-Tarts. Actually, I'm gonna eat some Pop-Tarts. So much better than cornflakes. So much better. John Harvey Kellogg, you were wrong about this one. Well, you see, the point of this video was to showcase something that we all already know, which is rabbit holes are fun. I mean, it's really fun asking questions like, who invented freaking cereal? Kellogg's. I mean, it's even more interesting knowing stuff like John Harvey Kellogg had one of the first versions of modern peanut butter also, which is also really funny considering that's a really tasty thing to eat. And to showcase even better how fun asking these questions are and reading about these things, I'm going to end on this note. You see, Kellogg's beliefs, while insane, didn't all fully come from him. In fact, the correlation between a healthy, bland diet and less sex drive wasn't actually his original idea. There was another guy before him who had these beliefs, which inspired a group of people that had the same beliefs. He went by the name of Sylvester Graham. You see, Sylvester Graham created this type of cracker. It was a really stale and hard cracker with no flavor at all. But eventually that evolved throughout the years. And now it's known as the graham cracker, which is put into s'mores. Thank you for watching.